There are many stories out there of strength, resilience, and courage, and we are on a mission to bring them all to you. Welcome to Empowered Voices Amplified. Our guest today is none other than Victor Asoyo, a partner at Solomon's Legal and Solomon's Capital. With dual degrees, yes, dual degrees in law and science from the University of Adelaide, he is the founding partner at Solomon's Group, focusing mainly on Solomon's Legal and Solomon's Capital. Victor has over 20 years experience in banking and property, is the head of legal practicing in banking and finance. Welcome to the show, Victor. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you? That's a fantastic introduction. Sometimes I hear that and I'm concerned. Is that really me or is that somebody else? But I'll take the accolades this time around.
Good, because it is all you. But I need to understand, first of all, this dual
Yes,
degree,
yes,
because it's law and
yes,
science.
yes.
How
So,
did that happen?
so law and science was interesting, and most people don't sort of they hear they go like, "What? How did that happen?" And the basic logic behind it was obviously I had an interest in the sciences since I was a kid, and that was influenced by my upbringing with my dad who raised me. He was a radiographer, a radiologist,
Oh.
and then the laws was from my family side. We had a judicial, I guess, exposure pretty early in our family, and my dad was a prosecutor as well. So that was sort of the genesis of it. But then when I got to uni, it was very much a case of you could do law, but you had to do it another subject. So you do a double degree. So I did law and science, and the science part of it was biochemistry, and so the logic again supporting that was at the time I was doing my law degree, there was a lot of focus on the Human Genome Project, which is basically just decoding the human DNA and finding out all the sequences. So I thought to myself, well, if I'm doing law and I still have a bit of understanding of science, then obviously I could put the two together and something might come out of it. I didn't know what it was, probably more intellectual property, but that was the genesis behind. So I still love science, even though I'm actually a practicing lawyer. So I pretend to be a scientist once in a while, and I still look at those science programs and sort of make sense of what they're talking about.
That's interesting. So, but do you ever find circumstances or situations where you do use your science knowledge in practicing law, or that doesn't happen at all?
I tend to use it more on my kids just as a weapon to show off my knowledge of sciences. but but occasionally it comes in handy when you meet a client who's in the science space and you can sort of make reference common reference to someone, I guess, some of the terminology they're using or to
Mm.
some of the, I guess, principles they're talking about as the genesis of the product they're either trying to raise money for or the contract they're trying to enter into to protect a particular aspect of their business. So it does help in terms of just engagement with people and sort of understanding the language they talk as well. Because I'm no financial person, so if I was talk numbers and accounting principles, I'd just look at you with a blessed tank. Whereas with a blank stare. Whereas if you were somebody who was talking numbers and you could sort of talk the same language, ratios and all that sort of stuff,
Mhm.
it's an easier conversation to have.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it. So, you went to university in Adelaide.
Yes, I
Can
did.
you tell us about when and why you moved to Australia, or why you decided to learn in Adelaide?
In Adelaide, yeah. I'll
Mm.
probably be showing my age by telling you when I went to uni in Adelaide, but
We're friends
I'm sure
here.
my makeup from this morning will account for more than that. So so I landed in Australia in back in '98, and the reason for that was back. I'm originally from Kenya, so when I arrived in Australia at the time, sorry, I'm going to take a step back. So back when I finished high school in Kenya, you had to take 2 years off before you could go to uni, and that was for a myriad of reasons. Namely, they didn't have enough universities, and the ones that they had, there were either too many people going to them, and you had to wait back because there was strikes and not enough lecturers and that sort of stuff. So it was just 2 years off, and then you go to uni after that. And I told my dad, look, I only really want to take a year off, so I took a year off, just did stuff I used to do. So did some IT stuff. I used to play a lot of sport, so I played sports for a year, and then I applied to universities all across the globe. And Adelaide was the first one to come back and say, "We'll accept you." And I said, "Here it is." And my dad said, "All right, off you go." And that's the story of Adelaide. Um, and then I suppose Adelaide became my sort of, call it, stomping ground, or like my learning curve into Australia, which was good because Adelaide is not a really big town at that time, which was it's a small. It's not small, but it's like a smaller town in Australia, so to speak. And it was a good learning ground because obviously there's a uni there. There's lots of international students, so I was pretty active with the International Students Association in Adelaide Uni. So that helped in terms of just acclimatizing to Australia, the Australian ways. So that was good. So yeah, that's my why Adelaide story, and I still go to Adelaide uh, fairly often. My wife is from Adelaide, so I've got in-laws there and I've got family there.
Okay. Do you did you do any research on Adelaide before going, or you just packed your bags?
No, we had a family friend who'd sent his their son to Adelaide to study.
Oh.
So they said, "Oh, it's a good place." So then, obviously, I then had to dig into what is Adelaide, where is it, and then reading all the colloquialisms, reading books about it. So that was
Mm.
interesting, and I think my dad was more interested than I was in learning more about Australia. So that was good. But he said it's a very far place, so I was like, okay, we'll see how we go. Like I
Yeah.
remember my first arrival in Adelaide. So I landed in Perth first, and then I flew over to Adelaide. And the first time I landed in Perth, that was a culture shock because it was in the middle of summer, and I remember the airport doors opening up and the heat wave slapping my face. I'm like, Jesus, what have I done to myself? Anyway, I said, I'm here now. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Oh, I know. I understand exactly about the heat. My first summer in Queensland, I was shocked because it's very humid.
Yes, yeah,
And, back home in Zimbabwe, there's always a nice breeze. You can
yes,
stand under a tree and be cool.
yes. In Queensland, it doesn't happen like that.
No, no, that doesn't
The
work.
breeze
We
is
need
still
an
warm.
aircon.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you came to Australia as a student. Can you talk to me about your journey as a student, how you found it and transition into your professional career?
The journey as a student was a challenging one. I think what made it easier was the mentality of I'm in a new country, I'm in a new place. I may not know too many people here, so you know what? I'm just going to put myself out there and meet as many different people as possible. I said, surely I can't be the only international student who doesn't have a connection. So I said, all those people who don't have connections, that's going to be my target to make friends. And it was just a matter of being involved with the International Student Association at the uni because that was a good, hub for people to meet each other.
Hmm.
So you shared stories, you'd help other students, and by doing that, you get more confidence in talking to other people as well and learning about Australia and Australian culture. So then we used to organize events. They used to call them, I think they call them O Week or Orientation Week, probably showing my age by using that term. But I think they still do them at uni. And that was good. It's basically like all the new arrivals, you'd organize like a 3-day camp, organize games and activities, get to know people, and then of getting involved in the student politics side of things. I guess negotiating with the union on behalf of international students. So that was pretty much what made my life, I guess, easier in terms of
Mm.
accommodating Australia. So and it was very much about wanting to learn about other cultures and other people and other students and making lifelong connections.
Victor, you spoke about, the mindset that you
Mm,
need just to have the right mindset. Where do you think where does that stem from? Like having, because to me, that's an empowered mindset,
mm,
realizing that, okay, this is the situation I'm in. How can I make the best out of it? Is it what in your upbringing or
mm.
anything from, anything you can think of that would give you such an empowered mindset, particularly for someone in uni? I mean, you're still pretty young.
um, I think when I look back, probably it stems from growing around a supportive family, but also growing up around a lot of adversity or seeing adversity, the consequences of adversity. So people in a situation where not because they're not smart, but it's more so about them not having an opportunity. And it's very much a case of, okay, look, I've been given this opportunity to do something with it. And I know there's probably friends of mine who are probably smarter than I am who will never do this because they didn't have the opportunity. So that to me was my, I guess, turning point in terms of anytime you're presented with an opportunity, you must make the most of it, because there's people who would love the opportunity you have, and if you don't maximize it, not only are you letting yourself down, you're letting them down as well. So for me, it's very much a case of, yeah, I just have to. The alternative is not an option. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, this is the way forward, and this is how we're going to do it. And I was a pretty from childhood. I was a pretty sort of introverted kid. Didn't talk much, didn't engage much. But also when I came to Australia, I was like, okay, you got to talk to people, you got to engage, and there's no other way. This is it now. So you do it, or there's no other option. So yeah, so that was it.
Hmm. If you think back to your uni days, and if there's anyone listening to this episode and they're a student, they're an international student, what would be your advice to them about how to just really make it as an international student in Australia?
I think my number one tip is, obviously, where I'm from, I was used to my way of life and my people and my food and my, I guess, and my culture. And it was very much, obviously, maintain your identity, but learn about other cultures, learn about other people, and sort of, you don't get a better chance to sort of, you're studying at uni with these people, and go out for, have a Korean meal, have a Japanese sushi, or go and, eat a Afghani meal, or try and eat an proper Indian food. Like, it's like food is like a common joining factor. And if you can do those things, and when you're a student as well, like, travel. Like, if you're in Australia, don't just stay in the state you've arrived in. Travel during your school holidays. Go and visit the states. Like, it might be like a cheap trip, or get a train or get a bus. You don't have to fly. But do those things, because, like, the more you do that, the more you see stuff, the more your eyes open up, and get involved in the student associations. Like, I think I did lots of different sports. Like, I joined fencing once as well. So,
Wow.
like, I didn't do it, but like, I did it for like a term or two. But then the idea was, just a chance to challenge yourself and do those different things, because you meet people and you engage with people, and you learn more about yourself by putting yourself out there.
I absolutely love that. I really love that. It's community, it's networking, and
Mm.
just getting out of your own bubble.
Yeah.
So, can you share about your professional journey? So, you've learned all these things in uni, now transitioning from uni to your profession, and how you've ended where you are now, founding partner at Solomon's. Like, what has that journey been like for you?
The journey is very convoluted. Most people think it's like a straight line. That is absolutely not the case. So the journey for me started, I suppose, when I was in uni. It was very much, like I said, I was very much, I just put myself out there, getting different jobs. So working in restaurants, working in a convention center. So I was a waiter for literally 7 years of my life whilst I was going through
Oh.
uni. Just, like, working at events. I did another job as a night porter as well. So basically, I
Mm.
check out people early, and tidy up the venue in the evenings as well. So it was very much a case of learning to work hard, and, I guess, committing to the cause of succeeding, not at any cost, but pushing yourself to sort of try and make those goals real. So started off working odd jobs, and then, because I used to pay for myself to go to some networking events as a student, and I met a few people here and there. Then one time I got a break. A lady needed a bias and needed some assistance preparing her brief. So I sort of said, "Look, I'm free. I've got nothing." She said, "Okay, you're here. You don't have to be here. You seem interesting. Come and work for me." So I started off with her, and then after that, I met a couple of guys at uni who had some jobs, and then we spoke, and then they had about other opportunities, and then I started working for other smaller law firms. Eventually, I got a graduate position at a Minter Ellison in Adelaide. So yeah, I was there for maybe a year and a bit, and that was a good experience in itself. I did various areas of law. Unfortunately, I didn't make it to the next phase of that. I got made redundant from that position, and then
Oh.
again, as you do, you apply for jobs again across everywhere. And I had a good support network of friends who've been through uni together. So we all find the same difficulty in terms of applying for jobs, and getting rejection letters even before you've sat down. So to me, it was very much a case of, well, you just have to keep pushing. And yeah, because I was in Australia, like no matter where I apply, if I get a job anywhere, I'm not wedded to Adelaide. I just have to go there and get a job. So I applied and got a job in Brisbane. And then I worked at that law firm for 5 years, and then again got made redundant from that position.
Mm.
Okay, not again. I said, you know what, things happen for a reason. So
Yeah.
again, applying for jobs. And then I had a job with Guidance, and I was there for 10 years. The last four of those as a partner there in the commercial banking and finance team. So there was three partners in that banking team, which two were commercial, one was retail. And then yeah, so I think my journey there after 10 years was like, okay, I've done what I can do here. And I wanted to move to the next level in terms of my profession as someone who actually does more than just being the actual transactional person, be more involved in the business side of things. So yeah, so a couple of friends of mine from Macquarie and I decided let's set up our own thing, and we started off with Solomon's Wealth and Solomon's Capital. And yeah, here we are 4 years later, and the law firm is only 2 years old. And I've got a fantastic partner, Roy Kim, who helps with the legal work. So yeah, so that's been pretty much a summary of the journey in a very, I guess, condensed time frame. I've left out all the fun parts.
We want to know the fun parts.
Blood, sweat, and tears is all I can say.
Your roles were made redundant twice. You faced layoffs
Yes, yes.
twice, and there are a lot of redundancies happening at the moment.
Mm, mm,
But you get onto LinkedIn, someone's been laid off, some
mm,
roles been made redundant, and it was particularly at a peak last
mm.
year between December and this year March. A lot of people being laid
Yep.
off. What made you? Because there's a lot of psychological warfare
Mm, yep.
that happens
Mm,
when you're told your role is being made redundant. It actually feels like you, the person,
mm,
is now redundant. How did you get yourself up to move on from redundancy to
mm.
getting on to the next thing?
To me, I looked at it as, again, it's about opportunity as well, right? And I had a good cohort of core friends, if I can call them that, core friends who we've been through uni together. We've done all the crazy jobs, picking fruits, cleaning restaurants, cleaning pubs, and that sort of stuff. So we
Mm,
sort of kept each other motivated in terms of, okay, if you've even before you made redundant, like we're applying for jobs, and you say, okay, for every rejection letter you get, you're gonna send out five applications, five
wow.
different people. So it was
Mhm,
very much a multiplying effect. Okay, and there was no sort of like, oh, I'm feeling left out, I'm feeling down. It was very much,
mm,
okay, I'm going to help you pick yourself up. My challenge to you is for every rejection letter you get, you're going to send out five applications. And everyone that comes back, another five for each one that comes back.
mm,
It was just a hustle, man. It was just push, 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 push. And something was bound to happen, which it did. But then with the redundancies, it was very much a case of I took the mindset again of it's an opportunity for me to grow. So
mm,
somebody that doesn't value a particular skill set that I have for whatever reason doesn't mean that somebody else won't want it. I just have to pitch it to somebody else and open another door. And it's very much a case
mm,
of get your redundancy, look at it as money that you haven't even received, and then
mm,
okay, I'm just starting from scratch again. What do I need to do? And if I have to stack shelves at a superstore for the time being as I'm looking for a
mhm.
job, I will do it. There's no pride in like saying, "Oh, I'm a lawyer and I can't get a legal job." No, at the end of the day, you have to eat. You have to pay your
Mm,
bills because the law doesn't pay your bills when you're not employed. Money
mhm,
does. So get out there, do something, and keep hustling, keep pushing. And the idea is it's very much personal drive, but also your
mm.
network as well. I find.
Wow. I like what you've said, about, you've got to eat, you have to eat, so you do what you need to do. But how do you stop yourself from
Mm.
caring about what other people will think? Because, it's people will talk, right? So
Yeah.
how do you not care?
Mm. You don't care because I suppose it's you don't care about other people's opinions because at the end of the day, you're the one who's feeding your family, feeding yourself,
Mm,
and doing what's right for sort of sustain, I guess, yourself and your family. So
mm,
there's people who are doing lots of they do lots of fancy crazy jobs, but there's no people are talking about those jobs, but there's no happiness in what they're doing. So I think for me it's very much, and even when I was leaving Gadens and coming across to set up our own business, I told my friends and my partner, I said, look, this is what we're doing, and this is what I'm going to do. And if it happens that it doesn't work out, whilst it's still being built up, I'm happy to stack shelves. I'm happy to be an Uber driver. I'm happy to do whatever it takes to actually help this business grow, because if you don't invest time in it, it's not going to go anywhere. And the same thing, if you don't invest time in yourself going through those trenches to come up on the valleys, you never appreciate the highs of it, right? Because if you haven't been in the trenches in the wars, like every time you're up there, you don't appreciate where you've come from. So you need to be in the trenches, and that's just, I guess, I'm of the mindset whereby I like I said at the beginning, like adversity sort of shapes a lot about you. I'm not saying you have to go and face adversity all the time, but like being aware of it and being, I guess, knowledgeable about what adversity means is very
mhm,
important.
mm. And the yeah, I'm literally blown away by by your mindset, because I know a lot of people who would rather not go through certain things and just try and find shortcuts. So I really love how you've looked at what you faced and then just gone through it. On the it's talking about Australia. You've been in Australia for a really long time,
Very long
school,
time,
school,
more
career,
than half my adult life.
Are there any specific customs or traditions or values that you miss or you found different from Kenya? Like between Australia and Kenya, anything that
Hmm.
was a huge culture shock to you?
I think the first culture shock was being a person of color. Obviously, it's like when you arrive here and you're the minority, you're like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Where are
Where
my
am I?"
people at?
Exactly. And when you see it on TV, you're like, "Oh, that's just a movie. It's okay." Like there's a few
Yeah.
colored people on TV, like in the mass of, I guess, white people, and you're like, "Oh, that's just normal." But when you're actually in it and you're walking down the mall and you're actually consciously aware that you're the only sort of dark skinned person walking down the mall. You're like, okay, this is different. Not that people are looking at you, whatever. It's just
Mm,
it's a very sort of like out of body experience. Like almost like you're levitating about yourself, looking yourself walking down the mall, going, okay, I'm the only dark person here. What's going on? Looking around. So it's kind of like, okay, it is what it is. But I think the idea is, when you're in that situation from a culture perspective, like I think for me, it was very much a case of working with Australians, learning the lingo. And I clearly remember one time I was in Union, there was a lady, she used to serve us in the servery. She used to serve all like sandwiches and like drinks or whatever. And she says, and she used to say to you, like, what can I get you, love? And I'm like, what she mean, love? What is she going on about? Who's love? I only know love in very limited context. So I've never met her, and she was an older lady, of course. And by the time I got around to appreciating what she meant, I was like,
yeah.
okay, that's just a term that they use to sort of say, what can I get you? So like, I'm like, okay, I don't use the word how can I help you, love, but it's those
Yeah.
things that you sort of once you learn those colloquialisms or like demeanor, then you sort of get used to it. And the only way to do that is to be involved in the community. Like, like I remember I used to go out and teach school kids when I was in uni
Mm,
about my culture and how to make
mm,
toys and like soccer balls and cars and games we used to play.
mm, mm,
And and those things sort of then help you get confident in yourself
mm,
and not forget about yourself. And at the same time, like there's no harm done in teaching another kid about your upbringing or how things are
mm,
done back in your culture. And now, like to this day, like I've got three kids, and I try and teach them some of that stuff as well. And like it's just the ability to sort of pass on that knowledge or that information to them is a very powerful tool in terms of once you love yourself and your culture, then you can, I
mhm.
guess, be willing to accept and learn about other cultures because nothing can sort of pierce your armor if you know who you are.
That's powerful. Have you considered becoming a coach?
Absolutely not.
That
Are you
was a
trying to
big.
recruit me?
I'm trying to recruit you.
The Magnus Victor coaching group. See
Yes,
what happens. The
yes, absolutely.
EV group.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, we've actually just got a great business idea. um I like what you said about, you, when you know yourself and you love your culture and where you're from, then you can be open to other things, and you've got that foundation of who you are there any things that you miss from Kenya, that anything that you don't find here that you wish you could?
Yeah. Biggest one obviously is family. That family sort of network, and it's hard just because when you're here, I suppose, yes, you have family here, and your family here becomes more of your social friend network. Whereas back home, you got immediate family, and like you're constantly seeing your cousins, your brothers, your sisters, your nephews, your uncles, your aunties, and everyone is like, oh, this is an uncle from blah blah blah. Like, what? He's an uncle. Okay, interesting. That's pretty cool. But then here, like it's just your work network or your social network, and then your other African people in I guess in your community who you engage with, then they become family. I definitely miss that aspect, and I used to love because when I grew up in the city, but I used to love going to the countryside because obviously my grandparents were in the countryside. So every time it was school holidays, we get shipped off the countryside. So
Mm.
I used to love it, like just the fresh air, the grass and the dirt on your feet, and kids in the countryside poking fun at you for being a city slicker, and you're like playing, they play tricks on you, and you remember all that stuff, and that's the stuff that I miss, and it's just like that freedom of like your feet touching the soil or smelling the air, and you just grandma is cooking, or like you've been dropped off and you run wild for the day and come back home in the evening, and you take the cows to the river and that sort of stuff. So that's what I miss.
Oh. I used to, so back home in Zimbabwe, I used to love going to the countryside as well.
Mm.
And we used to spend probably a week
Yeah.
of the school holidays there. And I remember at one time going there when I was quite
Mm.
ill, and my mom wasn't going to leave me there. But within a few hours of breathing the fresh air, I was fine. I was there's something magical about that lovely country air back in Africa. It's
I,
just
I think it was grandma's love. Grandma's love was a cure.
that could be it as well.
Yeah, when nothing is restricted to you. Like, and have whatever you want, you can have
Yes.
it.
That is so true. So, were there any, like we said before, you've been in Australia for quite a long time. In that time, have you encountered any stereotypes or misconceptions about, your own culture or background? And, how have you worked through that and come out stronger?
I think yes, there have been instances of coming up against that ideology or mentality, and the way that I deal with it is very much a case of um, I accept that at any point in time there'll be people who are going to think like that. And there's people who don't
Mm,
think like that. So I channel my energies towards people who don't think like that to sort of take advantage of that, I guess, energy or vibe, as opposed to feeding the other the other wolf, which doesn't deserve to be fed. Because if you sort of dwell on the fact that I might get this wrong. There's a story about an American Indian father who's, I guess, he's asked by his son about like anger and love, and he said, and the dad says to the kid, like, there's two wolves inside you, right? So it's the one that you want to grow and flourish is the one that you feed. So if you feed
mm,
all the anger and the frustration and like the aggression, that wolf will grow and overpower the other one. So it's up to you what you want to sort of do with that. So do I face? I don't face it every day, but I can see
mm,
it when it comes up. And the way to deal with that is just be factual about what it is. Like if I know what I'm talking about, like this is the answer, and I'm a professional, I will
mm,
hold up to that. But if I don't know the answer, I'm happy to say I don't know the answer. I'll find out. So that's on a professional level, but on a personal level, people who sort of just talk nonsense every other day, and you just have to look at them. You tell, and my thing is I just tell them, look, that's your opinion. It's not right because of A,
Mm,
B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and
mm,
I just sort of like I've got enough strength and confidence in myself that
mm.
certain things can't happen. Of course, it's annoying and it hurts sometimes, but
Yeah.
you can't let it be your world. You just have to sort of like have enough of thick skin to let it brush it off. And sometimes people say things and you're like, that could have meant something else in context, but I don't think they actually meant that. But I'll give the
Mm,
benefit of doubt. But if it happens again, then I just have to bring them up and say, hey, you can't be saying that.
mm,
That's not on. And if it's not to yourself, it's somebody else. You can't let them do that. And I think the way you sort of try and grow your circle of influence is sort of just impart knowledge about different cultures and different experiences. That's why people realize, oh, these people actually like they actually you can engage with them. Like you can actually think, you can actually sort of socialize them. They're not what I'm used to on a bias level. It's just that's not true. That's the only way I deal with it.
What you said is very similar to something that Debbie Lodin shared with Sandra and I a few nights ago about how at times people speak out of ignorance.
Mm,
They speak out of ignorance, and we can either choose to let that impact us, or we can choose to just look at it and move on,
mm,
because we gain nothing, as you said. Which wolf are you feeding?
mm,
So I love that, the way that you've taken it, and the perspective on the speaking of life transitioning from being a student to careers to the redundance, all these things that you have faced. What would you say were the key lessons you learned,
mm.
and some of the tips that you'd give people who will likely experience what you've experienced in the last few years?
I think, and I go back to it's a mindset thing, and also having a good support network. But if there's one thing I'd sort of want people to think about is how do you build resilience in yourself? Um, because we'll all face challenges, and I face challenges every other day, and I'm sure you do as well. But
Mm,
it's a question of how do you equip yourself to be able to face a challenge. Like sometimes, you're feeling down and you don't want to go to work, but you know what? The alternative is not an option. So you have to get up and get to work and get things done. You know, and it's that ability to not fight, but the ability to want to get better. I think
mm, mm,
um, deserve better and get better and work hard for better. And I know sometimes hard work doesn't pay off, but eventually it materializes into something, be it a
mm,
small realization or a big one. Hard work always pays off. It may take longer, but I've just been brought up that to sort of get anywhere in life, you need to work hard. And
mm,
sometimes, luck is very much a case of when hard work and preparation meets opportunity. That's what luck is. So
yeah.
so you need to be ready for that time when the opportunity comes. You make your own luck by you've been working hard. The opportunity comes along. That's the equation for luck, I think.
Mm. What motivates you to keep pushing forward?
I suppose pushing forward for me is very much a case of obviously at the moment for me personally, I think it boils down to family and kids, and that's my big driver. And it's very much a case of I'm the eldest in my family, so obviously I've got lots of people looking up to me, and there's lots of, I guess, from our cultural perspective, a lot of pressure in being the eldest person. So I have to sort of be that person they look up to. So that's a driver for me. I suppose I've got friends as well. So I think my driver is a whole lot of factors. There's not one particular thing that drives me. It's very
Mm,
much a whole various factors, not all of them, but just I guess it's family, it's my business friends, and it's my friends, and again, it's also me as well personally, just me as a person as well. So it's just maybe those four things: so myself as a person, my family, I guess my friends, and then just my general social network. I guess that's my driver. Just
mm.
keep pushing every day. And like I said before, some days you have good days, sometimes you have bad days. But so long as you're having more good days than bad, you're ahead.
That's good. Yeah, I'm a firstborn as well, so I totally relate. I can relate.
How was it when you're growing up? Do you have siblings?
I've got one. I've
Yeah.
got
So
one.
my
Yeah.
biggest thing with my parents is like, how come this young person is allowed to do all these things I was never allowed to do?
Yes.
And they say, but you are the eldest. We have to use you as an example. But no, but they're not listening anyway. I'm like, no. But you are
It's
the
always
eldest.
tough
Doesn't
on the
matter.
first one.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And then all these other ones come along and have an easy ride, and then they don't even listen to you in the first place. Bloody hell.
Oh, that is so true. And, speaking of growing up and children, and you've got three children. How do you how do you raise your children in a way that they can be, proud of their cultural heritage and
Mm.
just that foundation we spoke about earlier?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you find navigating, raising them up in Australia and trying to keep them aligned or engaged with customs that mean a lot to you?
Hmm. I think that's always a challenge. Before COVID, I used to make about every 2 years with like a journey that I could take the kids back to Kenya and then we'd spend like 3 or 2 weeks there with family. So we actually got people to know them and that sort of stuff. And then there's other simple things we do, like we try and every time I call home, I try and get them on the phone to talk to the grandma, the uncles, the aunties, and they've got some relatives in other places in the world. So we sort of try and keep in contact with them so they can see what their cousins and their nephews are doing, so to speak. But then, as part of that, it's always about having that conversation with our kids. So making them realize that yes, you're in Australia, you've been born here, but you've also got a heritage in another country that is forms part of who you are. So don't ignore the Australian side of yourself, but you have to accept that you're going to have these two sort of, I guess, driving forces behind what influences you as a person. And it's simple things like taking them to the community events. Like you got a cultural like a Kenyan event or a Zimbabwean event or a Sudanese event or African event, just taking them to those events. And then when you're at sporting events as well, like other African kids were there, like try and form friendships or partnerships because I can bet you they're going through the same stuff you're going through. So why don't you go and talk to them and engage them? And even then, that's cool. Like if you're in a school where we're in the minority, talk to the minority guys, like find the other Africans in your school and sort of talk to them where they're from, what's the story about. So I think it's just instilling those things in them. And being involved in the community is important in terms of just your local, be it Kenyan, Zimbabwean, or Ghanaian community, being involved in that. And then the wider African community is critical for their development because they find people in there who say, oh, okay, Johnny is also playing sport as well, and we're probably going to be the same state team. I think that helps. Or we're going to be the same debating team, or we're going to be the same chess level championship. Okay,
Mm.
good. So then they can form those networks, because without that, I guess from that community perspective, they don't have an idea. And I've seen kids who they've been brought up to sort of ignore that African side of themselves, and then
Mm.
they end up at a stage where they're like, oh, identity crisis. And I can't blame the kids, but at the same time, like, if they had some direction in terms of, okay, this is where you're from, you're
Mm.
Australian, yes, but you need to learn about this other side of yourself.
Yeah.
No harm in doing that.
Mm. Yeah, I like that take. And I think there was a research done on they called it cultural crisis identity,
Mm,
where children get very confused. They're raised at home in a certain way, and
mm,
then they go out and they're expected to behave in a certain way. So I love how you've put it that it's a blend, You
mm.
you are Australian, but there's this rich side of you as well, and combining those two together, even it makes us even better human
It
beings.
does, yeah.
I really like that take. Are there any? So we like to give, skilled migrants or any people thinking of moving to Australia or those that are new in Australia some tips about how they can make life more successful for them. What would be some tips you'd give, particularly new migrants in Australia, for them to have a successful career or
Yeah.
successful life?
Yeah, I think the most basic one is obviously find your local community association or organization because they'll be a good contact point for where do you go to the shops, which doctor can you see, and which school do you send your kids to, and even if it's a language barrier, you might find people who can then help with translation or just like general business ideas or just general coping mechanisms. So that's the first point. But even if you don't have that, like get involved in the community clubs around yourself. Find out, like there might be like a, call it a golf or a lawn bowls or a basketball or soccer or whatever it is. Get involved, and when you attend those things, make sure you volunteer as well. Don't just turn up and drop your kids and then bugger off. Like it's turn up, volunteer, because there's lots of parents in the community who are either working in really good positions that can influence your life in terms of giving you a job or encouraging you to find talk to someone, and that's how the student society works. Like it's very much there's a very much a culture of volunteering, and most people are shy to volunteer. But I've found that by volunteering at my kids' clubs and the sports that they play, I've met a lot more people. You engage with different people, and you get to learn more about Australian culture and Australian people. So it helps when you take yourself out of your comfort zone,
Mhm.
not only volunteer for your community, but also volunteer for your local association clubs, because these things run on volunteers, and it forces you to then engage with people and learn different skills. And that's a beautiful thing. Like once you've done that, people show, oh, you know what, he's never done this, but he's putting himself out there. Okay,
Mm.
I'll give him a crack. That's what
Mm.
I think is beautiful about the place.
I love that. Thanks. So get out of your bubble.
Yep,
Do not stay
absolutely.
at home behind the desk. Get out and actually meet people. Victor, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you very much for, stopping by and talking to us about all things and, having the right mindset to go through redundancies. It is hard,
Yeah, yes.
going through redundancies and the mindset to keep going and keep pushing. Thank you so much for sharing some empowerment tips and how you need to have the right foundation in order to build from that. Is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to share with parents that are raising children in Australia, just for just a little tip that we can conclude with?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and so it's been a really enjoyable experience overall. So I do appreciate you taking time to reorganize with me. I guess a parenting tip: it's always hard when you're in a different society, and like I suppose the basic things are don't compare your kids with other kids. Like that's a big no no. Like every child is its own sort of space, and even for me, like I've got three kids and they're all different personalities. So I
Mm.
just have to manage each of them. One is strong, this one, and weak in the other. So I just have to try and balance it out. So I don't try and make one of them feel like they're weak or whatever, but
Mm.
or make one feel like they're stronger than the other ones. It's always trying to balance that.
Mm.
So my tip is I'd probably learn to communicate with your kids. Because when I grew up, like communication was with my aunties and uncles and cousins, not my mom and my dad. Whereas here, my kids don't have that, So
Mm.
I have to learn to sort of be the communication point or enable them to have other friends around them who can be their communication point to for us to sort of learn more about, because there's things kids don't want to tell you, and like I
Mm.
understand why. And they'll probably, if you have a friend who's close to them, that friend will then talk to their parents, and parents will then talk to you like, okay, cool, now I can deal with this. But yeah, I think communication is very important, and it's very being confident enough to sort of, as a parent, to accept, okay, you know what, I didn't do well in this thing. I need to fix it. I need to make it better. That's one. But for me, I'm one of those parents where, like, when the kid is still young, I'm like, it's my way or the highway. And then as they get older, we can start negotiating.
I absolutely love that because then they have a voice. Then they
Yes.
have a voice and they know how to use it.
Yeah. Before
Well,
that, I think like you can the kid can express an opinion, but like as a parent, up to a point in time, you know or should know better. So you sort of
mm, mm,
lay down the law, but obviously lay down the law, but encourage them to think for themselves. So you don't want the kid who can't think for themselves either. Like you have to encourage that. But up to
mm,
a certain point, no, I'm still making decisions, and this is what's going to happen. But then eventually we can start discussing and giving your kids a bit more freedom. Like, oh, instead of you sitting here on your screen, why don't you go down the street and make some friends, or go to the park or something? Give them that. Start letting them have that freedom of sort of being more responsible.
mm.
That's pretty important one as well, I think.
I thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's very helpful. And again, thank you for taking time to talk to us today. It has been a mind-blowing experience. And
Thank you.
I've got so many notes right now of things that of some empowerment notes that I'll be using with my clients. So
Cool.
thank
Thank
you for
you.
that.
You're
And
welcome.
yes, we will pursue that idea of a company. You never know how it turns out.
EV
The,
coaching.
yes,
Thank
this
you.
is Empowered Voices Amplified. Thank you for joining us today. And if you've got any comments or questions for us, just pop them in our chat or send us an email and we will get back to you. So thank you very much and we will see you next time.
Thank you.